Hello and welcome to another episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. Today we have Sarah Daniel joining us, who is the founder and director of MOTIONrehab. MOTIONrehab is a pioneering neurological rehabilitation company, and as you will find out, it's been a real disruptor in the sector.
And what we currently know is that the brain doesn't repair itself, it reorganises. So it spends its time going, well, if this bit's injured and it can't do that particular role, let's allocate that job to a different part of the brain network. But to do that, you need to encourage the brain to do it. I think one of my proudest moments was in April 2023 when the National Stroke Guidelines were updated. Not only did they advocate intensive therapy to now 3 hours a day, but they were also recommending incorporating robotics. I think it just really endorsed everything that we had done. What we're seeing now is just this explosion of advanced technologies, robotics, and they're never going to replace the physiotherapist. They're never going to replace what we describe as clinical reasoning, how we rationalise what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. But what they can do is augment how we deliver treatment.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome to the podcast, Fear Less, Do More. It's great to have you here. A healthcare pioneer, I think. Reading everything about you and hearing about you, that's the way I think I would describe you. And having a bit of a background in healthcare myself, it's something that really excites me, because I think quite often there are brilliant innovations within the NHS that don't get to the forefront. So really interested to hear about your business. Your business is MOTIONrehab.
Yes. Yeah.
Just for those who don't know, can you give a little bit of a sort of overview about what that business is about?
So MOTIONrehab is a private rehabilitation company, and we work with neurological conditions, and that means any injury, illness, disease of the brain and spinal cord. So we treat people who've maybe had a stroke, head injuries, spinal cord injuries, children with cerebral palsy, people who maybe suffer with multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease, and maybe all the other conditions that you haven't heard of that kind of sit on the periphery.
And you started life as a physiotherapist?
So I'm a physio by background, and I worked in the NHS, and when you qualify, you rotate into different fields, and I kind of very quickly established that neurological rehab was kind of my passion in life. So after working in the NHS, I kind of transitioned into the private sector, partly driven by the fact that I think in the private sector you have a little bit more time to work with your patients and do what you train to do.
What was it that drew you specifically to that part of the physiotherapy world?
I think it's really interesting. I think I had always thought I would end up in professional sport, and did spend quite a bit of time in professional rugby. And the bit that I loved in the professional rugby field was not kind of patching them up and sending them out. It was the rehabilitation, why they keep getting the same injury, what's wrong with their movement patterns, what do you need to do to change it? And actually, neuro rehab is very similar, just the other end of the spectrum. So it's all about movement dysfunction, why people are not moving. And invariably for us, it's about a distortion in the nervous system. The messages that are getting to the body are distorted because of injury or illness. And that then makes it, to me, really challenging, really interesting. So I transitioned away from the professional sport into neurological rehab.
My experience of people who work in the NHS, they have a huge amount of sort of loyalty. Was that a big wrench when you moved from the NHS into the private sector?
I mean, I have the utmost respect for my NHS colleagues. I think what I was finding is that I was really fortunate to have some exceptional jobs in the NHS, and the caseload that I had, because I was in specialist centres, was really quite minimal. We had huge amounts of time to treat patients. And then just really the demands in the NHS meant that time got shortened, you had a bigger caseload, and I just felt really dissatisfied that I didn't feel like I was delivering the best that I could within that NHS environment. And that was really about the prompt of moving into the private sector, was making sure that I could help the patients to the best of my ability and help them achieve the best outcomes that they could.
So did you feel like an entrepreneur when you set up that business?
No, so my journey was a little bit strange. I went and worked for a colleague who had a private practice, and that was down in the East Midlands, and then was relocating back home to Yorkshire, and that's what prompted me to open the practice myself. Was I had a real passion for rehabilitation technologies, and nobody in the Yorkshire region was really doing that, and I didn't really fit within the paradigms of treatment that were being delivered in the Yorkshire region. So I kind of fell into owning a business. It was never my intention. And I think if you'd have asked me when I graduated, I saw a career in academia. I thought I'd end up doing, I've done my master's, but I thought I'd end up doing a PhD. I would kind of migrate that way. So business was never on the agenda at all.
I think that's quite common because people do things for quite often. My experience is you meet people and they've ended up in business rather than sort of setting out to be an entrepreneur. And quite often those people don't view themselves as entrepreneurs at all. And it's their passion rather than the business side of it.
So I wouldn't ever use that word to describe myself. I think partly because I can't pronounce it. So it's
just call it the E.
It's a word I avoid using. But yeah, I don't know that I ever I think I'd always see myself as a clinician first and foremost. And it was just about delivering clinical treatment. I have noticed in recent years when people ask me what I do, I say I own a business before I say I'm a physiotherapist. And I think when I first clocked that, I was like, well, that's an interesting diversion.
Yeah. Does that sit comfortably with you?
Very much so now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because I think sometimes people feel a bit sort of, I'm not sure that's really me.
I think it took a while to get used to it, but I think as my role with kind of running the company and I've kind of migrated away from maybe carrying a full clinical caseload, and I see that the majority of my work is now running and operating the business, then that sits well. But when I first clocked it, it was a bit of a strange moment to go, I've just noticed what I've just done there.
And you mentioned about technology. When I think of a physiotherapist, I think of somebody lying on a bed and somebody working on me with their hands. Yeah. What role does technology play in that whole scenario?
So first and foremost, we are absolutely manual therapists. So I would say if you look at maybe the core curriculum for training a physio, it's manual therapy, it's the hands-on, it's the pulling and tugging of patients, the massage, manipulation, whatever it might be. We're then highly skilled as exercise therapists and prescribing exercises. And actually, even when I qualified kind of coming up to 25 years ago, the other kind of part of that triangle was electrotherapy. It was using devices that would enhance recovery from injury, manage pain. Tech's always sat within the field of physiotherapy. What we're seeing now is just this explosion of advanced technologies, robotics, and they're never going to replace the physiotherapist. They're never going to replace what we describe as clinical reasoning, how we rationalise what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. But what they can do is augment how we deliver treatment. And in the field of rehabilitation, it's about doing as much as possible to help the brain rewire. And being brutally honest, if you've had a stroke and you have to practice a movement over and over and over again, it becomes really mundane, it becomes really dull, it's very boring. Sometimes it's not very tangible to the patient. It doesn't make any sense why the therapist is asking them to do that. And we know that we cannot hit the number of repetitions and the intensity with traditional approaches alone that are required to make the changes in the brain that mean that your brain learns. And essentially that was kind of what triggered my interest in technologies and how we can augment what we do by incorporating those. Just
so that I can visualise what goes on. So if I need to be rehabilitated after an accident or an injury, what will my interaction be with the? I've got this image of me sort of strapped into something and it moving my.
You're not too far removed. It doesn't look quite as scary as that. So I think probably first and foremost is understanding the principles why we do it. So we know that your nervous system in your brain is what we describe as plastic. We have what's called neuroplasticity. Yeah. Your brain can rewire and learn. And now that's not unique to rehabilitation. There's a reason we send children to school for more than 1 hour a week. Yeah. Okay, so, and that old adage, practice makes perfect, is true. You need to repeat and do things over and over again to learn a skill. And the evidence and the research is there in sports, it's in rehabilitation, it's in child development, it's in education. So if you have an injury and sadly you've had a stroke and you are struggling to use your arm, you need to do hundreds of repetitions to be able to relearn that movement. And what we currently know is that the brain doesn't repair itself, it reorganises. So it spends its time going, well, if this bit's injured and it can't do that particular role, let's allocate that job to a different part of the brain network. But to do that, you need to encourage the brain to do it. So what we do with our robotics is that if I've got a hand that I can't open and close to do day-to-day activities, I can put it onto a robot and the machine will open and close. And the patient is engaged with tasks that are on a screen. So a lot of it involves gamification. They've got some feedback. They can see whether their limbs are working, whether they're not. And they can get sensory feedback so they know that what they're doing is correct. And it just allows you to do repetition with really reproducible movements at the same speed, at the same range of movement. We can add in resistance. So essentially you're repeating a task, but it allows someone to do that so many times that we know we need to make those changes in the nervous system.
So have you had to develop this technology, or is this technology that was out there but nobody was using it?
So the technology is out there. I haven't developed technology. I'm not a medical engineer. I think so. My journey came about by feeling really frustrated. So my involvement in technology was very much looking at bits of technology that may well help people, but it was about them trying it and maybe buying that equipment and using it at home. Although that does have a role in rehabilitation, quite frequently they end up in a cupboard or and that felt really inadequate. So I then kind of went to have a little look at what maybe other people were doing. And the first inspiration was it started as a research project in the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery in London. And they were doing a project where if you got somebody a couple of years after having a stroke and you gave them intensive rehab, could you improve the function of their arm and hand? And arms and hands are much trickier to rehabilitate than standing and walking. And the outcomes of that project was looking really promising. And I thought, I like the idea of that. So me being me, sent them probably about 150, 200 questions about their service and the referral and the kind of patients and the technology that they had started to integrate. And then a long story short, that led to me going to a conference in Austria where one of the manufacturers make their equipment. And I sat and listened to clinics from all across Europe who were integrating these technologies into their rehab. And what was really interesting for me, it wasn't the big economic powerhouses that were doing this. It was countries like Serbia and Hungary and Croatia that were leading the way. And I kind of sat there for the first day thinking, if you were going to buy a little bit of equipment, which would you buy? Do I buy this one or do I buy that one? And then the second day I went, I need to get it all. So I came back and I sat down with my FD, lady called Amanda Newman, and went, I've had this idea. The research is saying we should be delivering intensive rehabilitation. There are clinics that are doing this in Europe. And if we invest in the technology, we'll help accelerate people's outcomes and hopefully give them their life back sooner. That's what the research was saying. And that was the start of the journey.
At that point in time, were you met with scepticism, not from your business colleagues, but from the community?
Oh, absolutely. I think we invested heavily, and we haven't got investors in this. It was all done internally. So there was kind of the mortgage on property and bootstrapping and raising the finance. And I felt really strongly that we would have a model of care. So instead of patients coming to us maybe once a week or twice a week, or us going to see them in their home, the plan was, right, let's put the academic research into practice. Patients will come to us for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, somewhere between 3 and 5 days. 1 hour is still that hands-on pulling and tugging and exercise with the therapist, because that's what the research says. You can't replace the therapist with the technology. And the other 3 hours is still on a one-to-one basis with clinicians, but that's when we augmented it with the robotics and the advanced rehab technologies. And actually the patients got this and their families got this. They're like, of course, if we do more, we'll get better quicker. But there was a real barrier to, if this is the new way of how to do rehab, why is no one else doing it? So that was a real challenge for us. And it was having the confidence. There was a few kind of clients that went, do you know what, it's worth a punt, let's have a go. And their outcomes were phenomenal. It just demonstrated what the research. And then as soon as we started sharing client stories, we gained traction.
So storytelling became a
absolutely
big part
and
of
it remains a big part of us, because I think ultimately that's what it's all about, is the stories of these people who have tragically had kind of catastrophic injuries or circumstances that have really impacted on their life. And our job is hopefully to get them to be as independent as possible.
Do you remember that sort of first patient who you thought, this does work and this is significantly better than what was before?
we have actually one of our clients, and he, bless him, we've stayed in touch. He no longer needs our help, which I think is a job well done.
Yeah.
And he was a young man. He'd had a car accident and in his late 20s, and the services that he was with had said to his family, you're going to be discharged to a nursing home, you're going to live there, you're 26 years of age, this is kind of your ability. And his mum approached us and said, what do you think? I'd read all of the research and I went, no, I'm confident we can do this. And the young man, Marlon, has remained kind of a bit of an inspiration because he's now passed his personal training qualifications. Wow. He's working, he's going on holiday, he lives on his own.
Not in a nursing home.
Not in a nursing home. And I think actually kind of we suddenly went, he was the one person where I suddenly went, do you know what, it works, it's right.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? And he will always be an ambassador for you. So
and he has continued to be an ambassador, and he has continued to and very kindly let us share his story. And then I probably have to give a lot of credit to the team that work for me, because this was some idea in my head, and they came along for the ride, and I'm forever grateful of that. So they're the guys that deliver it now. But in those early days, and they go, well, what are we going to do about this? And I was like, oh, we'll figure it out. Because it was all in my head, trying to articulate the vision that I had in my head. And operationally delivering that is a little bit tricky. My team have been fantastic and supported me along the way to deliver this.
Has your team remained quite consistent?
We've got a really good core, and I think we've provided opportunities for different people to come in and at the start of their career and then explore things afterwards. But I think the company, people see my face, I think in the industry they know me, but actually it's not about me, it's about the team that deliver the service.
Yeah, it always is, isn't it? And I think there's something to sort of come to terms with as being the face of the business, is that I feel an obligation always to give credit to the people that are behind the scenes, because they're the ones that make things happen. I'm just the one that tells people about it. It's the way that I look at it.
I think generally what happens is now I go into clinic and I cause general chaos and I leave again and they're like, oh, thank God she's gone.
Are you still practicing as a physiotherapist?
I do.
Well?
I don't carry a full clinical caseload, but I do still practice. And then I really enjoy working with my team. So again, I'm never sure whether they're happy when I kind of join in a session, but I like having have we done this? We done that? Yeah. But also I get to learn from them. It doesn't really matter. I think with any healthcare profession, you've never learnt everything that there is to learn. Absolutely. So regardless of the level of qualification or how many years postgraduate or what experience, you can always learn from somebody else. And I think as therapists, we're very good at working as a team and learning from each other.
And you were responsible for this becoming part of the NICE guidelines as well.
I don't know whether I can go quite that far. I think NICE is the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence in the UK. And when we started out back in 2018 delivering intensive rehab, the NICE guidelines for stroke rehab were 45 minutes a day. And we sat well behind the rest of the world. So Australia, Canada were recommending at least 3 hours a day. So there was, for me, this real sense that what we were being advised to deliver were wholly inadequate. And then we implemented this intensive rehab, and we had done our market research before we opened, and the words intensive rehab didn't really exist anywhere. And then shortly after we opened, it was everywhere.
It became the buzzword.
Yeah, I think absolutely. But I still feel very passionate that you can't deliver intensive rehabilitation without incorporating robotics and technologies, because it's not how long you're in therapy that counts, it's what you do in that time. So you have to have the dosage and the intensity. And again, I don't believe you can achieve that without augmenting and leveraging with technology. I think one of my proudest moments was in April 2023, when the National Stroke Guidelines were updated. Not only did they advocate intensive therapy to now 3 hours a day, but they were also recommending incorporating robotics. So excellent. I think it just really endorsed everything that we had done. I can't say I've taken any credit for that, but I think it's nice to see that the NHS are now recognising not only the research that we've implemented for the last 7 or 8 years, But hopefully that will open up doors for patients in NHS sectors moving forwards.
It's an interesting dynamic, that, isn't it? I was saying, because, most businesses, when you talk to business owners, they want to keep the competition out. They want to be their USP. We're the ones that do technology. We're the ones that do robotics. You've got to come to us. When you're in healthcare, there's a very different dynamic.
Absolutely. There was a real sense of interest in the industry when I opened back in 2018, and I felt this pressure of people watching to see what would happen. We opened our second robotics centre in the end of 2020. So having navigated a very, very challenging COVID lockdown, when we reopened, just demand for services were so high. And actually, from a business point of view, you're thinking, great. But actually, if you stand back and look at the human impact of people requiring rehab, it actually was quite saddening to see how much people did need our services. And after we opened our second facility, there were other competitors in the UK that started to follow suit, and with their own twist, but we're trying to do something similar. Weirdly, I really welcome competition. So firstly, it helped with the marketing burden because everyone's endorsing what it is that we've been shouting about for a couple of years. So the more people that are doing it, the more we're educating the public that this is really how rehabilitation should be delivered. And then really sadly, the way it's a market where I don't feel that it can become saturated. So many people will need help. And some of that is, I think, just the marvel of modern medicine. People who had, catastrophic brain injury from a car accident or a really severe stroke, when I qualified 25 years ago, would sadly pass away. Modern medicine means that they're surviving these horrendous injuries or incidents. But that then means that there is a big burden on rehabilitation because ultimately the impact of having individuals living with long-term disability has a massive impact on social care and their quality of life. So I'm quite happy to share the idea, and I'm quite happy to see other people that can support individuals because we can't help everybody.
Yeah.
Fear Less, Do More is brought to you by the team at Square One Law. If you're enjoying this episode, hit follow or subscribe. It really helps us out, and it means that you won't miss out on any future episodes. We have some great fearless guests that leave you feeling really inspired. And if you think someone else would enjoy it too, feel free to pass it on, whether that's a mate, a colleague, or someone in your network. Thanks for listening. Now back to the conversation.
I was going to ask you about what your sort of personal driver for doing this is, but I think I probably know the answer already. But what drives you to do this on a daily basis?
It sounds so cheesy, doesn't it? That whole helping people. But I think that the healthcare practitioner is deep rooted in you, and it can be a really slow process. Rehabilitation after a neurological injury, and there's no kind of instant win, particularly these patients and their families are so committed to achieving the best. And I think it's when someone, stands for the first time, takes their first step, can roll over in bed, tells you that they've managed to go to the toilet for the first time by themselves or hold a glass so they can drink on their own. If you imagine what somebody's life is like, and that's such a sense of achievement, I think it's suddenly realising that you are making a difference to individuals. Yeah.
That I thought it would be something along those lines. And obviously you've had to learn how to run a business. You must look back and think, what was I doing at that point? Or I wish I'd done that differently.
Oh, there's loads of mistakes, I think. I think when I started, I did work with a business coach for about 18 months. I didn't know the difference between net profit and gross profit. So that it's been a really steep learning curve. I'm a little bit of a control freak in that I need to understand everything.
Yeah.
And then it's taken a while for me to realise that, you can understand it, but that's not your skill set. So again, I've surrounded myself with a great team of people who can do things that better than I can. But it's been a really steep learning curve, and it's not been without a few mistakes and a few tears along the way.
Have you got any sort of examples of where you look back and you think, no, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done it this way instead?
Probably too many to discuss. I think that big challenges were the first clinic was really difficult because we had to get a change of use on the building. And talking to the local council was really challenging, that they wouldn't do the change of use. And they kept denying us things like car parking, but the building had been tenanted by a business with significantly more people on site. And I was like, but we're going to have less people. Why is the car park now an issue? And then we had a moment where they denied us the planning because we didn't have a green travel plan. And I needed to put in how many of our clients were going to come on a bicycle. And I was kind of like, you're kind of missing the point. If they can ride a bike, they don't need to come and see us. So a little bit exacerbated. COVID was just really difficult to navigate. And there was the burden of employing staff. And thankfully the furlough scheme kind of took a little bit of that burden of how we supported the staff. This idea that we just had to abandon our clients, that was really difficult. And there's only so much you can support on a telephone. And then being brutally honest, the financial impact was really tough. And just looking at, we got really close to losing everything during the first lockdown. And there were times where it just felt too hard. And then I'd kind of pull myself together and go, look, just read, study, work out what policies and procedures you need to have in place to open safely. So I think, again, when we did reopen after COVID, it wasn't without its challenges. But, opening the doors again was a big relief.
A big relief. How long were you closed for?
We closed from the day we went into lockdown. We actually closed a few days before the official lockdown. I remember them saying kind of only go out if absolutely necessary. And we were expecting clients to stop turning up, and they kept coming. And then we had this discussion as a senior team and just went, we kind of have a moral obligation to close because these are the vulnerablest people in society, and they're still coming in it. And it was lovely to see how much they valued their rehab, but we ended up closing before the first lockdown to actually try keep the safety of and protect our clients. And then we reopened it on the 1st of June. So date ingrained on my brain.
Yeah. It's the same as me, because we opened a new office in Leeds on the 20th of March, which was not the best day to open when you've got to close again on the same day. I think everybody sort of remembers lockdown for different reasons. But, you very easily at that point in time could have gone, God, this is just too hard. What kept you sort of driving up? Because presumably the NHS were crying out for people to go back in at that point in time. You could have gone. It
was quite strange, actually, because there was discussions at the time around where we had our clinics. Quite a lot of the stroke units had been closed because they needed to redeploy those staff to other areas of the hospital. So there were conversations about whether we could support and take those clients with us. And in all honesty, I think it just became so overwhelming for the NHS to try logistically manage all of this. I think we had a couple of my staff that did go back and support the NHS, but I was very much sat there reading national guidelines and also international guidelines about different policies and procedures to maintain safety. And so I spent those days in lockdown in front of a screen tapping out policies.
I think a lot of us who were running businesses at that time, it was the sort of fastest MBA you could ever do, where you learn change management
absolutely
on speed within a couple of weeks. All those new things. Furlough, nobody had ever done that in this country before, and getting to grips with funding and having to deal with your people and all of those issues, people being worried, and just general safety becoming right to the fore.
And again, the team were great with it. Once we did reopen, we kind of talked through our policies and procedures, and we put all that in place. And I think they probably all thought I was then mad, because we'd had this really challenging time, and economically it was really challenging for me personally. Having kind of raised the capital to open the clinic. And then roll on September 2020, and we went, actually, we're going to do it again. We're going to open another centre. So we rolled out our second in December 2020, and then we've rolled out our third intensive rehab centre in February 2024. So it's nearly 2 years old. And then we have a fourth clinic that has some technologies in it, but not the full rehab suite that we have elsewhere.
So what's the plan for the future? More clinics?
That's the plan, I think, it would be nice to kind of have aspirations of opening facilities. We can help patients. We're doing increasingly amount of work supporting NHS clients as well. It's lovely to be bringing on different clinicians at different stages of their career and giving them the opportunity to work in a facility that has world-leading technology in it. So yeah, hopefully we'll kind of keep growing.
And what do you think is the sort of the biggest lesson that you've learned over that time as a business person?
Again, I don't want to sound too cliche, but I think it is always recognising you don't know what you don't know. So quite willing to learn from my mistakes, and I'm somebody that probably learns a lot from criticism. So if you give me feedback, as long as it's constructive, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'd like to learn what I've done wrong. I like to learn from my team. So I think that's probably one of the areas of recognising if you don't know something, go figure it out, rather than thinking I've got this nailed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that's a core part of progressive leadership, is that if you is recognising that you don't know all the answers, and but being comfortable with the vulnerability and being comfortable with able to say that, because I think in days gone by, the leader had to have all the answers and be like, this is it, this is the way we go. But,
and that's probably especially so being a female.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I ever really noticed any gender differences in my role as a physiotherapist. It's very female heavy. And then stepping into business as a woman, that has opened my eyes. I can go with one of my employees who's male, and you walk into a room and they're spoken to first. That's always very interesting. Yeah. When I went to tour the clinics in Europe, I remember meeting a consultant, a gentleman, one of the clinics. And there's a bit more of a hierarchy between doctors and therapists in Europe. So he was like, oh, who's going to open this clinic? And I went, I am. And he went, no. Who's going to be in charge of your clinic? And I went, I am. And he went, no. Who's going to own the clinic? And I went, still me. So it was just that recognising that as a female business owner, there are maybe some additional challenges that I wasn't expecting, having come from a profession that's very female dominated.
Yeah. And it was that because he was because he was a doctor.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, that hierarchy in Europe, I think, is very different. There is the doctor and then there's the lowly therapist. We don't see that too much in the UK.
No, that's good. That's interesting that's not prevalent here. It's a good thing. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think we talk a lot about, as women in business, about how far things have come, but there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of stereotypes. I remember when I was a young lawyer being always presumed to be the secretary there to take notes. And ask people, somebody asking me when's the lawyer coming, and I'm like, no, it's me, mate.
You stick with me.
yeah. And having to sort of reinforce that time and time again. And I think some of that overt sexism has taken a back seat, but there's still a lot of stereotyping and unintentional bias that's in there.
And I think actually as I progress through my business journey rather than my clinical career, I'm increasingly proud to be a female owner and founder.
Yeah, and I think you should be proud of being a female founder and a woman running a business. Are there any other moments that you felt that real sense of pride about, God, yes, we've really achieved something? You talked about the Stroke Association rules previously, but is there anything else?
I think from a business perspective, we were contacted actually completely out of the blue by Google and the Financial Times, and we had been selected as a top 100 company in Europe.
Wow. For
being a sector disruptor and an innovator within, a digital innovator within our sector. And I think I was blown away that we had been recognised as maybe shaking up the rehabilitation industry.
Yeah.
And I think at that point I suddenly realised actually we've pioneered something differently. We had this lovely reception invitation to go, I think, to Google headquarters in the Netherlands for the award.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, I was speaking at another conference. So actually my finance and operations director had a lovely trip and met the team there to accept the award. But yeah, I think that was I was really taken by that. And I had gone to meet a friend a couple of weeks later, and he works for a business in central London, and I was sat in his reception and the actual FT magazine was there, and he came down to meet me, and I opened it and I went, look, there's me in the FT right in front of you. So yeah, that was again an exceptionally proud moment and something that was wholly unexpected, but we had been recognised by some pretty authoritative organisations.
It's also,
worldwide.
it has real credibility because it wasn't something that you applied to be on.
No,
It was something that you've been independently recognised, which I always think is far better than just applying for an award and
absolutely
managing to write a better application than anybody else. Yeah. Well done. That's great.
Thank you.
So outside of business, what's your passions outside of looking after people and getting them back on their feet?
As a family, we're really outdoorsy. So I think my absolute passion is probably hill walking and getting into the hills, getting into the mountains. So
what's your favourite walk?
Well, I have a little static caravan up in the Yorkshire Dales.
Oh, lovely.
So I there's a few routes around there that I feel very at home at. And then I do crazy things like, I think for my 40th birthday, which was only yesterday, I bought a trip, sent myself from France to Spain over the Pyrenees. Ooh. So I kind of try, and I've got a really lovely walking group that we met on that trip and we try to keep together. But anything outdoorsy is fine by me. Yeah.
Walking from, so how long was that then?
We did a 4-day trip.
Right.
Yeah.
How long were you walking for every day?
Probably it's somewhere between about 10 and 12 hours. I mean, they had this really bizarre moment where I was walking with the mountain guide and she was asking what I did and I explained it to her and she said, oh, the gentleman that trained me to be a mountain guide and did all my assessments had a really awful injury and he's having really specialist rehabilitation in the UK. And she mentioned his first name and I went, yeah, that's us. We're delivering the rehab. So I had this really odd moment in the middle of a mountain where I was helping somebody's friend in our services. So this it's quite weird that as a company we've never intended kind of spreading the word internationally, but that has happened.
It's having an impact,
We welcome clients from all across the UK and internationally. They travel from across the world to come to see us for rehab. And again, it's amazing that happens. It was never intended, but
is it a nightmare at parties though? As soon as somebody finds out you're a physiotherapist, they're not saying, "Oh, just have a look at my shoulder."
All the time, they always ask, "Oh, I've just got this back, I've got this shoulder," and then I just say, "Well, actually, I don't do that kind of physio, and you never want to see me professionally." And it kind of ends the story very quickly. Yeah.
You get that as a lawyer as well. You know, it's like, "Oh, I've had a builder in, and they've not done a very good job," and it's like, "Oh, and we've had this dispute in the family," but I'm like, "I don't do any of that.
Not my bag." Yeah.
It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. I'm fascinated by the business, but also the real passion and the impact that you're making is incredible.
Thank you.
So I hope that in a few years' time we see more and more motion rehab centres. Are there any in the northeast?
Not yet. Do you know what? Because we, like I mentioned earlier, we kind of welcome clients from all across the UK. If I had a penny for every time someone went, "Oh, you need one in Scotland, you need one in the northeast. Are you coming to Kent anytime soon?" But it would be lovely to go quicker. But I think to maintain the quality of what we deliver, there has to be a pacing of how we roll out the service.
And it sounds like you've got a really strong ethos that runs through the business around care. And yes, you could go and get PE funding into the business, private equity in, or but it would change the core purpose. And I get the feeling that what you're driven by is the core purpose, not the sort of the pounds at the end of the day. No. Which is lovely to hear.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Sarah, for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Fear Less, Do More, brought to you by Square One Law. If you found today's conversation inspiring or interesting, we've added a recommendation for what to listen to next. That's either on the screen now or in the show notes. Take care and we'll see you next time.